You've been told to be kind, to be good, to be soft, but no one warned you that kindness, without clarity, would be your undoing. No one said that being good doesn't protect you. It exposes you. You worked hard, you stayed loyal, you did the right thing. And still they left, they lied, they forgot. Have you ever asked yourself, why am I the one who hurts while they move on without guilt? You've waited for life to be fair, but fairness is not a rule, it's a story, and you were taught to be a character in someone else's plot. Obedient, predictable, silent. But what if I told you silence isn't virtue? That loyalty is only currency to those who know how to spend it. There's a reason they never taught you the real rules, because the moment you wake up, you stop being easy to control. And they hate that. So ask yourself this, are you ready to stop bleeding for those who wouldn't give you a drop in return? Because what you're about to hear isn't comfort, it's clarity, and it's going to hurt before it frees you. Thank you for being here, and I hope you stay, because the part they never wanted you to know starts now. It always starts with giving. You offer your time, your care, your loyalty, not for reward, but because you thought it was right. They said kindness matters. So you gave more than they asked. You stayed longer than they deserved. You forgave what broke you, and they smiled, took what they needed, and left. No explanation, no closure, just silence. And in that silence, you searched for fault. What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? You weren't wrong. You were just unprotected. They never told you kindness without clarity becomes currency, and the world knows how to spend it. You gave trust. They saw vulnerability. You gave second chances. They saw free access. It wasn't personal. It was strategic. They didn't hate you. They just knew you wouldn't fight back. And they used that, not with cruelty, but with convenience. You stayed silent. So they assumed it didn't matter. You kept showing up, so they assumed you'd never leave. And one day you realized they never valued you. They valued the version of you that asked for nothing, that questioned nothing. You thought loyalty was noble. They saw it as leverage. You thought love was protection. They saw it as access. This wasn't a single betrayal. It was a pattern, a system, where good people are seen as tools, not treasures. And you believed being good was enough. But goodness isn't armor, it's exposure. They never meant to hurt you. They just never needed to care, because you never made them. You weren't too much. You were too available, too forgiving, too believing. And now you're here, staring at the pieces, realizing the pain was never a mistake. It was a message. And that message is clear. You weren't weak. You just played the wrong game. You were told the world is fair, that if you work hard, stay kind, play by the rules, everything will work out. But it didn't. It hasn't. And deep down, you know why. Because fairness is not a fact. It's a fantasy. A bedtime story told to keep good people obedient. You believed effort earned reward, that honesty earned respect, that love earned loyalty. But reality doesn't pay in fairness. It pays in leverage. You see, while you were giving, they were watching, calculating, testing how far you'd bend before you broke. And when you didn't break, they pushed harder. Not because they're evil, but because they could. That's the part no one told you. People don't respond to goodness. They respond to boundaries, to strength, to silence that signals control. You've been living under a lie, one carefully crafted, to make you easy to use. To make you believe that being good is the same as being safe. It's not. It never was. Goodness without guardrails isn't virtue. It's vulnerability, and vulnerability without wisdom invites wolves. Machiavelli didn't tell you to be cruel. He told you to wake up, to stop expecting justice from a world that rewards strategy. You weren't losing because you weren't good. You were losing because you didn't see the game. You gave your time freely, your love without terms, your loyalty without leverage, and they took it, not with gratitude, but with entitlement, because kindness to them was never a gift. It was a weakness, and now you see the lie for what it is. You see the system, the manipulation, the way you were taught to stay small while they played large. So, what do you do with that? Do you collapse into bitterness, or do you evolve? This is your turning point, where the pain becomes clarity, where confusion becomes command. Because the lie has done its job. It kept you quiet, predictable, powerless. But now you're rewriting the script. And the first truth on the first page is this: the world doesn't honor goodness. It honors power, disguised as goodness. You thought kindness was always good, that giving meant strength, that love would be returned, but no one told you kindness can be weaponized, not by you, but against you. You helped them heal. They used your presence to avoid fixing themselves. You forgave their mistakes. They learned they could hurt you without consequence. You stayed through the storms. They stopped worrying about creating them. Because to them, your kindness wasn't noble. It was useful, predictable, easy. And what's easy is exploited. This is how it happens. You say yes when you mean, "I'm tired." You say, "It's okay," when it's breaking you inside. You show up even when your soul's crawling, and they smile. Because you didn't leave, you didn't argue, you didn't resist. They call you strong, but they rely on your silence. They praise your patience, but they stretch it to its limits. They admire your loyalty, but only because they never had to earn it. This isn't kindness, it's conditioning. You were taught that love meant sacrifice, that being good meant accepting bad behavior. But love without standards isn't love, it's permission. Kindness without boundaries is not virtue, it's exposure. You weren't too soft, you were too accessible, and the world took notice. Machiavelli understood. Kindness must be calculated, given with awareness, backed with strength, framed with limits. Because if you give endlessly, they forget it has value. If you show up for everyone, you disappear in the crowd. If you stay without condition, you become disposable. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious, about choosing when to give and when to guard, when to forgive and when to walk away. The most dangerous kindness is the one they don't expect. The kind that says, "I will help you, but I will not bleed for you." So from now on, your kindness will have clarity. It will be sharp, selective, intentional, because real kindness doesn't come from emptiness. It comes from power. You were taught to speak up, to explain, to express, to never let silence speak for you. But silence is not weakness, it's strategy. They expect your reaction, your defense, your explanations. Because when you react, you reveal, you show your wounds, your fears, your limits. And in that exposure, they find control. But what if you didn't react? What if your silence wasn't surrender but power? Imagine this: they lie, and you say nothing. They insult, and you remain calm. They try to provoke, and you just watch. That's silence. It's not emptiness, it's calculation. It makes them question, fear, doubt, because silence forces reflection, and reflection is the enemy of manipulators. You've been conditioned to prove yourself, to defend your worth, to earn validation. But power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't justify. It doesn't beg to be seen. It enters the room quietly and shifts the gravity. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be visible to be felt. Silence, when chosen, is not absence. It's presence. It's pressure without noise. Machiavelli knew those who hold power don't announce it. They radiate it, because when you say nothing, they fill in the blanks with fear, with assumptions, with caution. And that is where control begins. So the next time they test you, don't defend, don't argue, withdraw. Let your absence be louder than your outrage. When they expect you to break, remain unbothered. When they push for reaction, stay still. That's silence. It's not passivity, it's precision, and precision is power, the kind that doesn't scream, it whispers. And that whisper, it terrifies. The world doesn't treat you based on who you are. It treats you based on who it thinks you are. And that isn't truth. It's perception. You may be wise, but if you appear uncertain, they'll doubt you. You may be powerful, but if you appear needy, they'll dismiss you. Machiavelli understood. Perception shapes reality. People don't follow truth. They follow confidence, certainty, narratives. That's why bold liars succeed and quiet truth-tellers vanish. Because in this world, it's not enough to be right. You must be believable. Not just competent, but compelling. So ask yourself, how do you walk into a room? How do you speak your boundaries? Do you ask or do you declare? The powerful don't over-explain, they don't overshare, they curate, they craft, they build presence, not by volume, but by precision. You don't need to prove, you need to project, because image is armor. When built right, it protects you before anyone tests you. And when they don't know where your line is, they step carefully. Not out of fear of you, but fear of the unknown. Mystery commands more than clarity ever could, so stop trying to be understood. Start shaping what they see. Let them wonder what you know, what you feel, what you'll do. Don't correct their assumptions. Use them, direct them, because when you control how others feel in your presence, you control how they act in your absence. This isn't deception. It's direction, not lying, but leading perception with intention. You already have power, now make them see it. Before you speak, before you act, before they even realize they're following your lead. You thought loyalty was everything, that standing by someone meant they'd never let you fall. But now you know, loyalty has a cost, and not everyone is willing to pay it. You gave your time, your silence, your presence, even when it hurt. You stayed when others walked. You covered when others exposed. You fought for people who never fought for you. And one day, they left. Quickly, quietly, without explanation, without guilt. Why? Because loyalty to them was never sacred. It was situational. As long as it served them, you were valuable. The moment it didn't, you were replaceable. Machiavelli saw this. He warned, people are loyal not to you, but to their benefit from you. That's not bitterness, that's structure, that's how power works. And when your loyalty comes without leverage, it becomes expected, unnoticed, unappreciated. They didn't betray you because you were bad. They betrayed you because your loyalty was no longer profitable. And when loyalty becomes a habit instead of a choice, it turns into submission. You weren't too loyal. You just forgot to be valuable. To yourself, to your standards. You can still be loyal. But now it will be different. Now it will be earned, balanced, reciprocal. You'll stop offering it to everyone. You'll start reserving it for those who earn it with consistency, not convenience. Because in the end, true loyalty isn't just about staying. It's about staying sharp, staying clear, staying aware. And if they leave after you stop giving blindly, they never stayed for you. They stayed for what they could take. Something shifts, not with a scream, not with a breakdown, but in silence, in the space where pain used to live. You wake up, not to joy, but to truth. You realize you were never weak. You were just unarmed, fighting with trust in a battlefield of tactics. You thought goodness was shield. It wasn't. It was an invitation to be drained, used, forgotten. But now you see it, all of it. The manipulation, the silence that meant advantage, the praise that meant control, the love that was never love, just need. And suddenly, you stop apologizing, for asking questions, for walking away, for protecting your peace. Because now, you're no longer trying to be saved. You're becoming your own rescue. This isn't revenge, it's redefinition of self, of strength, of standards. You won't scream, you'll set boundaries. You won't beg, you'll build presence. And when they ask what happened to you, you'll smile, because they never knew the version of you that stopped bleeding for approval. You're not colder now, you're clearer, Not heartless, but harder to reach. Not cruel, but no longer compliant. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've lost your softness, but you know you've only returned to what you were before the world taught you to be quiet. This awakening, it's not loud, it's not public, it's yours. A private promise to never abandon yourself again, because the real you was never too much. It was just too honest for a world that profits from your doubt, and now that you see, you can never unsee. This time, you rise differently. Not with fire, but with form, not with rage, but with rules. You don't just want peace. You want structure, you want clarity, you want control, because now you understand. Softness without a system is just sacrifice. You're still kind, but no longer open to all, still giving, but not from emptiness. Your rebirth isn't loud, it's measured. You don't explain your standards. You enforce them. You don't react to disrespect. You remove access. Machiavelli would nod. Not because you've become ruthless, but because you've become exact. You no longer hope to be chosen. You choose. You don't seek acceptance. You set conditions, and from those conditions you build a life where your value is visible before your voice even speaks. You start small. You pause before saying yes. You question who gets your energy. You hold space only for those who respect it. This is not armor, it's architecture. A design where you protect what matters without apology. You still feel, but now you filter. You still forgive, but only once. Your heart still loves, but it no longer bends for those who break it casually. They'll notice, not your distance, but your direction. They'll feel it. Not in what you say, but in what you no longer offer. This rebirth, it's strategic, because love without wisdom is exploitation, and kindness without filters is a target. Now your life is filtered by intention, by alignment, by truth. And the people who remain, they'll know. They didn't just meet you, they met the version you chose to protect. You used to want to be liked, to be accepted, to be seen as good, as agreeable. You thought being pleasing meant being safe, but now you know pleasing is not power, it's performance. And performance, it's exhausting. It erases you to fit their comfort. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You said yes when your soul whispered no. You lowered your voice so they could feel tall. But something's changed. Now you don't chase approval. You command presence. You don't try to be liked. You show up as you are, unshaken, unapologetic, because the ones worth keeping don't need you small to feel big. You're done over-explaining, done negotiating your worth, done shrinking. Now your presence speaks before your mouth does. It says, I know who I am. I know what I deserve. I will not be diluted. And that presence, it shifts rooms, not with noise, but with clarity. You're not colder, you're calibrated, not harsh, just whole. People may call it attitude, but it's alignment. They may call you difficult, but you're just done performing, because when you stop pleasing, you stop leaking energy. You start attracting respect, not attention, respect. And respect lasts long after applause fades. Machiavelli would call it quiet control, the kind that doesn't beg, doesn't bend, just stands. So now you walk into the room and say nothing, and still they feel you. Not because you asked, but because you exist without needing permission. And that is the beginning of true power. This is not the end. This is where you return to yourself, not the self they shaped, but the one they never saw, the one who was always there, beneath the bruises, behind the silence. You don't need revenge. You need reconstruction. You don't need applause. You need alignment. You've spent years trying to be good. Now you'll focus on being grounded, on being guarded, on being grown. This isn't bitterness. It's boundaries, not hate. Just hierarchy of self over sacrifice. You no longer explain your standards. You no longer tolerate the slow erosion of your soul in the name of connection. Because connection without protection is a trap. You won't bleed for crumbs. You won't kneel for peace. You won't burn just to keep others warm. They told you your softness was strength, but they lied. Strength is not being easy to hurt. It's being wise enough to choose when to care and when to cut off access. You're not heartless. You're healthy, not detached, just deliberate. And now you stand, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as an architect of your new identity, one built on truth, on clarity, on presence. You no longer beg for space, you take it. You no longer plead for peace, you create it. Machiavelli didn't write for kings born into power. He wrote for those who earned it, who built it in silence, through scars, through awakening, and now you are one of them. You don't need to be feared. You need to be unfuckwithable. Not loud at all, just undeniable.